Okay, welcome to the weekly Terrorarium dev team stream. My name is Wayne. I'm one of the game designers and the team lead on Terrorarium. Thank you for joining us. This week we're doing something a little different. Normally we're playing the game, we're looking at features. We've been playing an awful lot of level submissions for our level design contest, but this week I'm joined by Stitch Media's art director, Jeff Flores, who did all of the character design and art and things like that, or at least he did a lot of it. He led the team that made all this stuff. So today we're going to be talking about how this art was created. We're going to be looking at a lot of old character designs and see how some of the characters like the gardener and the Mugu evolved in the game. And we're just going to have a conversation about how these things get done, how our team overcame different types of problems, where the ideas came from, all that good stuff. So, Jeff, if you want to introduce yourself or say anything else, feel free.
You covered pretty much a lot of it. Working on this game. No, I'm just art director. I think the early stages of this, it was a smaller team, and there was a bit more of a hands-on approach to making the artwork back when it was a 2D game. And it's pulling up these old images really did kind of uncover a lot of the messier groundwork that was made.
Well, it's all got to come from somewhere. So
exactly.
Yeah, today we're going to be looking at exactly where some of that was. If anyone needed any indication that Jeff is an art director, you just have to look at the curated wall behind him of cool artwork in interesting frames and the clean line of the orange couch that he's on, and I'm an ugly gamer chair with a blank wall and a bed behind me and a poorly placed mirror. So all the cool looking stuff in Terrarium is because of this guy.
So there's a team. It's a team effort.
Yeah, it's true. What you see on screen right now is an early Mugu design. We've talked a lot on previous streams about how early on in the game's life cycle, when we were still ideating and figuring out what it was we were doing and what the game was going to be about, at a certain point we settled on these little things are Mugu, or they're mushrooms and they're called Mugu. And there was a point where we thought we were going to be making a 2D game, and so we started doing character designs for some early prototypes that we built that were 2D. And what you're looking at here was one of our first two mushrooms. I don't even remember what we called them at this point. Was this just called Skinny Mugu, or?
I'm not even sure if maybe we did, or maybe it was just blue. I just remember we just having.
Or is this the hydrophilic Mugu? Because this was the one that could go in water. I forget.
Water. Yeah, I think it could have been. I think it could have been. I think even at that point, it was, we're just calling them red, blue, green, and just figuring out what different things did they do and why did they.
Yeah.
Some
of the early things that Mugu were doing was living in or dying in water to make bridges. We've talked a little bit about that. You could force them to walk through water to die, and their corpse would float, which was walkable, so the next one would go a little bit further, and you could do that with dozens of them and build a Mugu corpse bridge.
Yeah. I kind of feel
this, I think, was one of the ones that made bridges. It died and it left a little floating cap. Here's another really, really early one for the strong Mugu. We had little things we were delivering around the screen, and these ones could bunch up like ants and carry stuff.
Yeah. Again, it's one of these things where I find that, even going back to the blue one, some of the concepts in the early stages I feel were even darker than what we ended up with.
Yeah.
Even though in our tagline now it's kind of adorable gore or cute destruction, and we do have that. You're purposely killing all these Mugu. yeah, in the early stages, you're basically purposely drowning things, which felt darker.
Yeah, it was a little. It was definitely more sadistic, I think.
Yeah.
We always were trying to maintain that like they they want to die. That was one of the original places, one of the original starting points for game design, and everything about this game was swarms of little things that want to die for some reason. And when we settled on it being about plants and gardening and things like that, it was like, what if they're mushrooms that have this life death cycle where they have to die to reproduce to make more, and it spiraled from there. But yeah, the earlier versions, you'll see some of the monsters and stuff we look at that were like one of the original objectives we devised for an early prototype was there was this big like furnace plant with tentacles that the objective was to feed the Mugu to that, and it was this big flaming thing with like wavering tentacles that the Mugu would like pull the Mugu in and eat them, which is more or less what we're doing now, but it was definitely more graphic. So yeah, these are the first sort of crack at trying to figure out the identity of these little guys. This is one of my favorite pieces of concept art that you did for this game. Like, I still think this is amazing. This, you'll see some older stuff as we go through this slideshow, but this, you drew this when we were still figuring so much out, and it just resonated with me. Do you want to say anything? Like, what do you remember about making this?
Well, I think one of the first things we got to mention is how many people have had a part into playing into developing this game, and even for the art side and the character side, the original concept. While I think the idea of mushrooms did come down early, we did have other people like interns helping out, and so one of our interns, she was tasked with come up with a whole bunch of like
here it is.
There you go. And this is like the very first iteration of it. And Synopsis thought, okay, that's cute. This is great. What can we do with this? And I think for myself, I felt a little too lizard-like, so I did pass on it.
Got those like salamander eyes, right?
Yeah, it's a bit more alien. I mean, cute in a way.
Yeah, like super ugly cute. They do look lizardy. You're right.
Yeah. So I think my pass was, okay, how can we make this a little more palatable? Up the cuteness, if we can have
the tusks. Maybe.
Yeah. It like basically myself was thinking if I made a mascot, what kind of mascot would it look like? Something adorable, cute. I mean, I guess there's a little bit of a tusk with a tooth hanging up.
Yeah, but it's more like I'm stupid kind of
yeah.
It definitely went more Disney, but I think when I saw the little alien ones and then this one, I mean, I fell in love with the belly and the belly button.
Yeah,
it was amazing. I just love that little like. It just looks so squishy, and when at that time we knew we're gonna, it's a game about killing them and popping them and splatting them, and it just looks so killable.
Yeah, I mean,
but you captured that like innocence in the eyes with the little glint and the buck tooth and the sort of softer edges, and I just was like, okay, this was one of the moments where I knew we were onto something.
Yeah, and I think even at this point, I mean, oh man, I'm not sure if it's included in in your files here, but that gesture drawing of what it looks like if it was fertilizing a dead body, because I
couldn't find that.
Couldn't find that one.
A GIF of
Yeah, because I'm not sure if it's been divulged to like in previous talks.
I think we've mentioned it. Yeah.
But but that drawing of it kind of like almost forcefully.
Yeah, well, what you see going on in the bottom corner here with the smoke is actually the idea is that that's their spores. So it is sort of a little bit sexual, but not really. But like, yeah, there was a GIF of this guy from that early prototype, like squirting spores out of his belly button. That was intended to be how they replicated when he'd find dead Mugu and do that. We glossed over that a little bit in the iterations that we have now, but that was the biological purpose of that belly button, I think, in the realm of Terrorarium.
Yeah, still to this day, probably one of my favorite illustrations, and would love to get it turned into a 3D model.
Yeah. It's like when you see people who do like those 3D models of the Simpsons where they're more humanoid and they look so like gross.
Yeah.
You know? Like this is like the Mugu version of that. Like I can picture this being all like fleshy and like moist and stuff. Even the little shirt, the way you differentiated the head and the neck from the body and the little white feet, like
I forget what that's called on actual mushrooms, but
yeah.
Again, I think with like removing the arms, again, reinforcing that it's a mushroom here. Yeah, this is something that I would love to turn into like a vinyl figure and have on my desk.
Definitely. If I was ever to get like a tattoo of any of our work, this would be in the running, definitely. So a little bit later, this even though this was like way more detailed than these, because these were like prototype art where we were just trying to work out, how the game works and things like that. This was us kind of like pushing past for a more refined look, and some of what we're going to look at now was still at the very, very early stages of talking about shifting the game to being a 3D game instead of a 2D game, and starting to imagine the lives and purposes of these little Mugu. So some of what you're going to see might not even be that mushroomy, but you did so much concept art that it was just like kind of casting a wide net. Like for instance here, I love this pink one with like the hair, the sort of like cute version and the sort of more dumb looking version next to it.
Yeah. What was in what's written above a hat? I guess I just
the guy on the bottom says toque or wizard cap.
Yeah.
So like the bearded one, and you sort of have these more like sailory looking ones there. So these are, these were explorations that we didn't really pursue. There's almost, the more humanoid look to them that I think for me felt like the more humanoid they get, the more problematic it is to make it a game about like murdering them. I don't know. They felt less like mushrooms and more like little people or something, but
I mean, it was quite the exploration to get to try and view them with a bit more personality and separation between all of them. You can definitely tell I was going in your direction. I'm thinking sailor, what was I doing drawing more some of them like sailors?
I'm just gonna throw a few more pieces up on screen. I know you're watching the stream to see this, so you're a little bit behind. I'll try and keep that in mind.
That's fine.
Here's just a bunch more concept art from that phase, just showing.
Yeah, like I think at that time we were looking at calling them different things. So that one was zealots. Again, I think they'd all have their own kind of tendencies and how we'd have to kind of balance each one's proclivities to.
Yeah, we were talking a lot about personality traits at the time. So if I recall, the zealots were these little red, angry-looking guys potentially.
Yeah.
Or these gung-ho, like they would charge at problems, and they were maybe a little harder to control, but were more of like an attack type Mugu. Game mechanics were still pretty early on in development at this time compared to what they are now, but it's interesting to like look back at all this.
Yeah, I mean, this was in the era of we still figuring out how the gardener and the Mugu work together. I think we're thinking the gardener ingests the Mugu, then the gardener gets their powers. And I think that's why some of these are a bit more jelly-like, that you see something within them that kind of gets consumed along with them.
Yeah.
I think that was part of the reason why some of these are a little less opaque.
Like this little shy-looking purple guy with the green Yeah, he looks tasty. He looks like a jelly bean or something.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a I think there's a good long phase there of just trying to hammer out what is this relationship between these Mugus, this gardener who, you know, was it the player, was the gardener off screen, and how does it work? Again, the earliest version of the game didn't have a visible gardener.
Oh, hey,
It wasn't
Mahulti. It's got a regular in the chat. If you missed the beginning, Mahulti, this is Jeff, Stitch Media's art director, and we're just taking a look back at a lot of the character designs and concept art and things like that for
okay.
Terrorarium. So, for anyone who wasn't here with us when we started, these are very early Mugu concepts when we were figuring out what the Mugu were and what they look like. And this was definitely on the game design side. I was sort of designing with the team what they did from a mechanic perspective and how they behaved alongside of this. And I definitely feel like there was like a symbiotic back and forth, you know? When I started seeing things that were more mushroom-like and the little personalities that you were starting to get out of them. Like on the right here, this green guy,
Mhm. You could definitely
they
tell
definitely
that's what
stuck with me. Yeah, like some of these you can see now. Like was that like the genesis of the gooey Mugu? Perhaps.
I think so. Like you just still see an expression, a slight bit of personality still there. I think the blue guy right beside him has kind of filtered into what we wanted for the red guy that we have now.
Yeah.
So
Let's see what else we got in here. Uh, from there, we went on to drawings like this. So this, as we filtered more towards what we knew we wanted to do, uh, this was our thick Mugu as you would know him today. I still always call him heavy Mugu because that was what we called them at this point in the design process. We knew
yeah,
we wanted a Mugu that their attribute we moved away from attributes that were so much about personality to ones that were a little more practical for gameplay, like heavy. One of the first
yeah,
things we had was Mugu that were heavy and could break stuff, or we had pressure plates that you could weigh down to like open doors in very very early versions. We had we've had wind for a very long time, and this I think was the first sort of Mugu that was anything like what we have now. So from all of
yeah,
those things you were designing, we ended up here.
yeah. And even from this point, you can see the beginnings indicated by the red line, the start of technical challenges for our team. So for 3D animator, we were intending, okay, we were going to have different movie designs, but we were going to have the same rig work on each of them. And so what that meant was constraining some of limiting having a commonality between each of the designs that can be scaled up, and so the animations could be used for each of them while still having a different kind of look to them. So that was like a new technical challenge that we faced at this point.
Yeah, this has just felt like we were getting close because the identity of the characters started to take shape, and you know, we talked about loving the belly buttons. Still got that
Yep.
big gnarly belly button, little tiny legs, so they look funny when they
Yeah.
run, which you can see in this GIF down here from a little bit later when we had a character model and we
Yeah.
started animating things. You can see their little feet and butts there.
Yeah.
Um,
Like the
you
fact
know,
that it's called
but
butt
wiggle
wiggle.
run dot gif, yeah. Sort of like this more cartoony look. Still has some personality. You know, he looks maybe a little like tired or like you know meh kind of. But I think one of the things we decided early on was how important the mushroom cap heads were compared to some of those other things we were looking at where they didn't necessarily even track as mushrooms. They could be kind of fungal, but they weren't mushrooms.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
I
I
mean, it
think
also
also the lack of arms. I remember you honed in on that, like, we don't want arms. We get so much more of the type of personality we want when we take those away.
yeah. I mean, again, like even for game design and character design, it was, well, we're going to be seeing these characters from a certain angle. You can't see their eyes if, the eyes are placed underneath the mushroom caps. So that was a change for this one. It was like,
True.
okay, what kind of things do we have to modify? Yeah, one of my
Uh,
favorite characters. Glad the butt made it in.
yeah.
I think that's a Maddie special.
Here's another. From that last GIF you saw, this
Oh my
was one
God.
of the early meshes for that
Wow.
Mugu, which looks kind of alien, but I found this on Slack, which I just thought was funny. Someone like highlighted the piece of the mesh that was the belly button for us.
Oh my God. Glad. Yeah.
I think I have one more piece of Mugu art here. So this kind of falls into that realm. Um, Let me reposition it a little bit. In old versions of the game, there was another type of Mugu called the gassy Mugu, who were all about jumping. Mugu at that time also had abilities that your entire swarm could do at once, where they would take on a shape or do something. And the gassy Mugu would become this balloon and lift you. You'd sort of target an area, they'd all suck up into this balloon and pull you there, which was super super cool. I just found this among the old like character sheets, and
Yeah.
I thought I'd raise it. This is from much further on in production. Like you can see basically the gardener that we have today superimposed in there, so we can see how she'd fit in this thing. But
Yeah. I mean, it was nice to even explore these kind of ideas. Um, have a trait that is very much unlike all the other movies out there. Um, I knew it was going to be a technical challenge to get even this working, and not even least have it be kind of transparent, work with Garner. And so sometimes I'm just happy to know that my end of the scale of working with art can be so much easier than the technical side of getting it to work. Yeah, but there's just so many. I mean, yeah, this is one of the ones that still kind of sad that never made it across the finish line. Uh,
well, you never know what could happen in the future. Uh, that's all I have for Mugu. Is there anything else you want to say about any of the?
for the movie, no, I mean we've covered a big portion of them. I mean, again, that one is still my favorite of all time.
It really did. This was like the one almost that started all. That one and the one that you said we had an intern just doodling ideas, Xandra, who did this.
Yeah,
So this one and that led to you doing this. That really was like an inflection point for what they would become.
yeah. It's pretty much solidified for team. We're like we know what they should feel like. We know what kind of creatures we're working with now. And when we deviated for something like this, we knew when it felt wrong.
Yeah. So I mean, to me, what I see is just like how long this process takes. Like looking at all these different phases they went through in the sketches, and it's like this is really we do have the red one there. So
Yeah,
that's what he became in that first 2D prototype.
yeah. Even back then, I was worried. I was like, how do we pull off 2D and all these frames needed? We need.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah,
It was very much a process of like looking for something. So, it took a while, but I'd say it's worth it. We got where we wanted to go.
yeah.
Why
There she
don't
is.
we Do you want to shift over to the gardener, or do you want to look at even some of the older stuff? What's
I'm
more
I'm
interesting to you?
game for whatever.
Okay, well, while we're talking about old, why don't we go back to, I have a little bit more of the sort of like 2D stuff we were messing around with. What's a good one to start with? This was just, again, from that first one of the, maybe it was the second prototype, but it was the first prototype where it was becoming a game about mushrooms and gardening and things like that. This was just a map that you painted for that test.
Yeah.
Which, you can see in this, like, it is in a tank. You can see the glass corners.
Yeah. Again, it was the idea of it being a terrarium, obviously enclosed that having these creatures kind of how do we scale the creatures? We're gonna zoom in, but get a sense for their size compared to what we know. Uh, and so this was the first little test to give them their own little contained world, give them some placement for objectives. So here we could see where I think the incinerator would have been, where the I forget what the
This guy.
bottom right one.
There he is.
Yeah.
So at this
I think
point, we didn't even have a gardener. We did not have a player character.
no.
This played not quite like an RTS, but it was a mouse-controlled game where you had different mechanisms for attracting or repelling the Mugu from different areas, and then their behavior when they were near things would happen. So it was about trying to like control this swarm. What we were trying to achieve was creating this little swarm that had a mind of its own, or minds of its own, that could be made up of different Mugu types at the same time, and trying to wrangle them to do what you wanted, to get them near things that they would act on or things that would act on them. And this was the end point for that prototype, was to this was like the early, an early iteration of a prime specimen, which was like the reason you were in there was to feed this guy,
Yeah.
which was
Okay.
would eat them and they wouldn't replicate. All this little smoke would come out as it fried them up.
Yeah. And I still like the callbacks that again, this was another character design that originated, I think, from Zandra's, where she took a lot of inspiration from real world plants. So this was a pitcher plant, I believe.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, and so my iteration on it, cleaned it up. But again, I do like the art style to this. I do like this phase of creating these boss characters and seeing how they could be reinterpreted. It.
Yeah, here's some more of that really, really early, just doodle type, make plants scary artwork.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can see like all her notes of like which ones were actually, you know,
Yeah,
from what plant originated from.
yeah, yeah.
I always like that.
Potato spud legs.
I
Puffball
mean,
mushroom.
it'd
Yeah,
be great to bring these characters in at some point, someday.
definitely. It's just gonna. Oh, this is a little
Oh, yeah.
low. This is a little. Oh no, there it goes.
Is it loading? There you go.
Yeah, old logo.
Yep. I mean, I enjoy painting that. I mean, that's
I
a
still love it. Yeah,
nice portfolio piece. I guess for this one, again, working with the concept behind this was look at the name. It was very much one of those B movie posters, both in namesake and design,
hmm
from a Laura Lit, those monster movies. It was drawing upon that kind of kitsch kitsch era of movies and trying to instill that into our game, at least, or in our uh, promo material.
yeah. It
Uh,
was more. It was a lot more horror at the time. We hadn't quite injected as much of the like bouncy or cuteness that we had. I mean, that would come in the transition to 3D, but it is really fun looking back at these and thinking like now At the time, we knew so little. We thought we knew what our game was, but really, we did not.
Yeah. I mean, even look at the characters here. The type of characters we have in this one, like the Venus flytrap head creature.
Yeah, well, they're
Well,
they're directly from here, right? This
yeah,
this
yeah,
succulent cacti peat moss thing, which there may be more pictures of somewhere else. And the Venus flytrap thing, yeah, these were like, there's that little mushroom. Oh, you can't see me; he's behind me.
yeah.
He's
I mean,
he's in there. Oh, I hear
yeah,
him.
definitely. You definitely see, like, to the comment, how in the early on in the process of the concept work, it was quite a bit darker than what it turned out than the cute game we have now.
Yeah, definitely. I still love this too.
Still, yeah. And I think that monster that did a little come too close to Stranger Things, I guess.
Just gonna say, there were some people on the team who felt strongly that
Yeah,
the big open maw thing there that's barfing was too Stranger Thingsy, which was new at the time. I guess this would have been 2017, maybe.
yeah.
Excuse me. What else do we have here? Just a few more things. We started coloring for that first prototype. Some decorations for that 2D map that weren't really. Again, I think Xandra made and colored these, right?
Yeah. Sandra, Michael, I believe, helped out at one point. Um, but yeah, what impressed me about this phase was how, even for myself, it expanded beyond even what I was imagining the game to be when I was seeing it come together. Um, just seeing it go from that tiny tank scale version into something that scaled up to be multiple times the size of what I thought it was going to be. It it kind of blew me away at that earlier stage of like, oh wow, we're dealing with levels much larger than I expected. Um,
Yeah. To go back to this, resize this. This was the first little map that we made. And it looks pretty small here, but the scale that we actually played at on it was quite a bit zoomed in. So
yeah,
I don't remember what exactly we did, but I remember having to go path your way back and forth for a few different reasons, and let's see. Here's some more sort of like vector arty stuff. I've referenced more than once on the streams. The very, 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 very first origin of this concept was sort of like a team game jam that we did over a couple days,
hmm
where we just brainstormed ideas, and it was a game about bacteria in a petri dish, and these were some of the assets from that, which were like, did we do that in? Was it like a 2 day thing? It wasn't like two
yeah.
days no sleep, but I think
No,
we did 2 or 3 work days, and
it was definitely less than about a week or less, and it was something that came very fast. Came together very fast. Um, we kind of were giving them. We're like, we're gonna. They're gonna be germs, bacteria. They're gonna live in this this zoomed in world, and we gave them little personalities where we thought,
there they are.
oh, there they are. Yeah, they'd copulate, they'd reproduce, they'd have to bring things from, I guess, virus to, the towers.
Yeah, this is very like that. Almost looks like the COVID model that you see on all the articles coming out these days.
Yeah.
Um, but
I,
yeah,
what I liked about this one was, I think even back then, I think we were considering being able to adjust each of their personalities, like having them little kind of dials that you can adjust, and each of those factors would affect
what they did.
how
Yeah,
they how they kind of work in the world.
Yeah, it was
Um,
weird. This was almost more of like a sim where you would like set up parameters and introduce variables, and then at this point we were picturing that it was very much like they'd behave and you would just influence their world to make them behave in different ways. And
yeah,
this really like guys with the little pound symbol things there. That's the origin of the Mugu Moji system that we still have, where they get the heart when they fertilize, or the little confusion thing when they get stunned, or the exclamation point when you beckon them. So that we maintained definitely.
yeah,
That stuck around.
yeah. Just getting like to know what they're thinking without having to like, because they'd be so small, you wouldn't be able to recognize what their facial expressions would have been. But no, I mean, even like this, looking at this right now, I'm like, if this was turned into a game, I'd play it. I like the style. I like this art
This
style.
looks like
I
it would
can get
make
with
like a
it.
good iOS game.
Yeah,
Maybe like a Tamagotchi type thing, where you just like start a bacteria dish and you check in on it every once in a while and meddle with it,
yeah,
almost like the Pocket Universe thing, right?
yeah.
Eventually, you look and there's like little cities and spaceships, and that could be cool.
I should get into those games. I like those types.
What else we got in here? Some old, like super old UI.
Yeah,
I don't know how interesting that is compared to what we could be moving on to. Oh, there you go. There's another early early monster design. Again, much
yeah,
more horror-y.
yeah. No, which? Okay, this wasn't the incinerator. Which one was this? This was the.
You know, I don't
Oh,
know
what?
that this was ever anything.
Okay.
It could have been an early version of this. Oh, there's a GIF. This is when we were just like, so we had this.
Yeah.
These were bombs you could place around that would blow up, and break things open and kill lots of Mugu at once. And around the time we were like, what if this was a 3D game? This was one of the very first. Where we took this and we're like, what if we? How would this work? What would it look like?
Yeah.
So I thought this was fun to look back at. So rudimentary compared to where we ended up.
I think this was maybe. I'm trying to remember the name. Minhaj. Maybe he did this one. Um, but yeah, this was probably our very one of our earliest tests just to see
Yeah.
what the game could be
From that
in this
to
bit of
this
process. So that's a bit of process from like
to this. Yeah.
drawing, going flats, doing, you know, masks and transparencies. Yeah.
And again, so much more horrible than what we're doing now. Like the tearing skin and the teeth everywhere. I remember pushing for more of that. I'm glad you guys moved me away from
Yeah.
too much of it, because
But again, I think this is based on a real plant, on a real fungus that grows like this, that kind of looks like an alien egg that splits open.
that splits
I
open.
don't I don't remember the name of it, but it is a real plant out there that exists today. It doesn't have eyes and teeth, but from looking at remembering what I remember of it,
Oh,
it's not that far off.
yeah, we did a lot of research into like gross and weird plants. Let's start looking at the gardener.
Sure.
At a certain point with that 2D demo, it became apparent that this game would be better with a player character. It wasn't something we thought we needed, but I remember doing a demo at one point where we took some of the basic behavior of the Mugu and we just put a little dot on screen that you could control with a mouse and keyboard or an Xbox controller. And all we had was you moved and the Mugu followed you, and you could point in different directions and shoot streams of Mugu at things, and then they would do what they were supposed to do, like become a bridge or eat something or carry something. And that started a long discussion about who are you and why. And I thought these were cool because the notes on top of your character sheet here were all the things we were talking about at the time, and like gardener
Yeah.
is on there, but we also have explorer, hunter, space mom. I don't remember that discussion, but I do remember like hobo space adventurer and
Yep.
Indiana Jones inspired adventurer were things we were talking about. So these are
Yeah,
some
I
of
mean,
those concepts.
even here, like the notes on top, how takes on the personality of Eden Mugu. You know, Kirby eats Mario Cat. You know,
Yeah.
how the move traits and how it happens. And I think that's where these kind of images come from, is showing the gardener consuming the Mugu, and then you can still see what is within the character at that point. Um, Obviously landed further away than where he ended up.
Again, that's okay because like these were cool, but they didn't feel right, right? Like
Yeah.
um, the whole adventurer type, like guy in the cape with all the bag and the pockets and things like that, just
Yeah.
felt a little off from where
If
we
there's,
wanted to
I
end up.
mean, actually, at the same time, up until, you know, pretty deep into development, I still held out the hope that the gardener, our current gardener, would still be semi-translucent and you'd be able to
Gelatinous.
see the gelatinous. uh, that never came about.
Yeah, I mean, there's still artifacts of that. When you switch Mugu, she doesn't her eating animation because the idea
You
was she'd
consume.
consume. It would be inside of her, and that's what changed the chemical composition of the Mugu. So,
Mhm.
want to become famous? No. Can we get a mod to delete and ban that, please? Here's some more of that. I just thought this one was funny, where you like took the base model of like the slime mold guy
Yeah.
and added like a camp scout guy. I don't know what this other one is, but like construction boots and beats or something. A snorkel.
Some of these are just like whatever random sketch I'll do and not feel bad. You know, whatever. I don't know why there's a snorkel there though. I don't know how that would work.
That's funny. But yeah, you can see the one in the middle has you sketched a little Mugu over the ball that's floating in there.
Yeah.
So we knew where we were going.
Yeah, it might even be alpha like oh wow. Yeah.
This is when multi space mom. This is when we started exploring what space mom might look like, or gardener. Space mom and gardener kind of became a single concept, I think. We've got a whole bunch of sketches in here we're going to cycle through of that, but
I would love to just remember the origin of the concept of thinking about her in this kind of way. Like I see the sketches, but
you have
I
to
wonder what
know
discussion
these might
the
not
art
be the earliest ones. Let me see.
no.
There's this. It's just some different.
Yeah. Well, I love to just like less so like the illustrations, but to remember the conversations around it, into thinking, wow, we're all cool with this kind of. We're gonna go down this route. We're gonna make her a space grandma.
I think a lot of it
And
was just figuring out the identity and humor of the game that we wanted.
yeah,
And I remember being very passionate about that it's about gardening and wanting it all to be plants. When we look at some of the monster concepts, while I was gathering them, I remembered being vocal against the ones that were too animal-like or not plant-like enough.
yeah,
So I specifically remember like Evan and Adam being very into honing in on like the type of humor we wanted and like the character of the game. And I remember once we knew it was about plants, I wanted to be like everything has to be gardening. That's
yeah.
the hook. And from there, I don't know. I'm just trying to backtrack, but it was probably like, well, who gardens kind of conversation that we had. Old
Yeah,
ladies, and I don't remember exactly, but I do remember when these sketches started hitting, and this
yeah,
like more babushka looking one with like the big Coke bottle glasses, like owl eyed, and the weird like spider webs and sticks hanging out of her backpack.
yeah,
That's the one that stuck with me. I remember seeing that and being like, she looks like super weird, super weird.
yeah. But again, it had that kind of uniqueness to it where I think Ralph felt like, okay, this is a character you don't normally see, you don't get to see in games. And so making that our main character, I kind of loved. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, going through the adventure types on all the others prior to that, all the different versions of the Gardener. This was the first one that I could almost like empathize with, like making it even an older character is something that generally isn't done.
yeah. Again, it was just so much searching, right? Like
Yeah.
just looking for what felt right, and she felt right. Like I don't think there was anyone on the team who was like, I don't know. Once this art started taking shape, I'm pretty sure everyone was like, okay, I see where this is going, and
Yeah. I think it might have even been one of your comments to add the boots to her, like these
maybe give
uh
her Wellington like wellies or
ones to
something
be
like
yeah.
that. Yeah, it could have been. I love this one here. It's the like babushka lady. I just love how
Yeah.
you have like she's got Mugu all tied up and in like a little cage. She's got the glass bottles for collecting specimens. Like she's really
Yeah.
these ones were starting to really embody where we wanted to head.
And probably the last illustration you'll see of her being kind of transparent. So
Translucent, yeah, maybe. These aren't all necessarily in chronological order. I'm
no.
trying to do that as I open them, but some other stuff.
Yeah. Explosion, you'll see this type of stuff happen from time. Just getting like keep it loose, find some good silhouette that to work with.
Yeah. Here's one where she's a little more like chubby and stout and more.
Yeah.
I think the difference between like this and the other ones we're looking at is like this one seems too cute. She doesn't seem capable of the murder to, involved in murder gardening. Whereas, you know, one like one of these,
Yeah.
you could see it.
Yeah, you definitely see like this one again, even though she has a walking stick, just comes off as being more adventurous or being a bit more active.
Yeah, and the little twig horns were a nice touch too. Um, some more of that exploration.
Yeah. I mean, I think by this point we kind of knew what we were working around. Oh wow.
Yeah.
With the human, I think at this point it's just like, okay, we're looking for an alien. How do we make it more alien? And these were just a bit too human.
Yeah. Too friendly.
Yeah.
Sarah's one where
Yeah.
she maybe looks too evil.
Again, I
Just
think
kidding.
again we knew that this was someone that would be, you know, putting Mugu into harm's way consistently. So
Yeah. Well, this one, that's basically like what her backpack is like now. Big sack
yeah,
tied up with ropes with like worms and leaves sticking out of it.
yeah. It looks like Tina from like that last one looked like Tina from
Oh, from
or
yeah.
something like that.
So this one is where she starts to become more of herself. The
Yeah,
conversation I remember having about this was the first test models we were doing, 3D models of her. You can see the reference there on the bottom. Was too much like that friendly. She looks too cherubesque. She's too. I mean, it's a a rough in, so she's pretty flat and smooth and things like that. But like she's too bright-eyed, she's too chubby. She looks too much like she wants to help, I think. And then I remember you sketching this like these face drawings as a reference to be like, make her more like this.
Yeah, like here I think, a simple thing like removing the ears, um, lowering her, I think, nose line, reducing the nose, making her look a little less human. And I think even the age here didn't quite come through, where, yeah, she did look very cherubesque here and not old enough. Um, yeah, I remember us in the office getting our first 3D model of the gardener, we're like, oh, not quite.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
this is a
turnaround of the final model.
yeah, of when we started really getting close
Honing in
to
on
it.
her.
I wanted you to explain this to me. I do not remember this Turtle King guy at all. Professor
Pistol Splat.
Splat. Yeah.
That was Adam's creation, and yeah, I'm not sure if you're around, if you're, I think, on vacation or what that time. It's where he wanted another main character,
Oh, okay.
and kind of like a foil, and it was this CEO type of character. What do I have written here? Franklin Turtle.
5 chains, Franklin the Turtle, weird hair, way bigger, pocket protector, lab coat.
Yeah. Again, this one might be a sketch for you to bring up with Adam, because this was one of his brain dumps. I'm like, sure.
I remember most of this stuff, but I saw this and I was like, I do not recall this at all.
This was never.
But you can tell it's from pretty far in because that's the gardener.
Yep. Yeah.
So
no,
like that, she is who she is at this point.
No, this was one of the times I just remember Adam paying a visit, coming down, and hey man, I got an idea for this.
So yeah, this is her today, and this is her in-game model today without her backpack.
Yeah.
But you can definitely see, like you were saying, she's primed to be translucent, isn't she?
Yeah.
She's not quite, but the gloves, the boots, the little horns, the glasses, that like unimpressed sort of like look.
It comes through.
Yeah.
And again, credit to Maddie in getting a lot of these facial expressions and poses. Like, again, this is probably from one of the cutscenes, but just the amount of emotion that comes through of her disappointment looking at this.
Yeah, I think this is her getting yet another second place ribbon.
Yeah. So much comes through. And
yeah, I think that was a potential. That was supposed to be a possible nemesis, Argonian sandwiches.
Yeah.
But
again, looking at this character, this model, I wouldn't change. Like, I really do believe that we hit on the perfect character.
I'm pretty happy with her. I don't think I'd change anything either, other than maybe it would be cool if she was translucent. But
yeah,
how much that would we see? So
yeah. Now, anytime I see
perfect
like
character,
sorry, my
that's okay.
Audio.
I guess it's or something. Yeah.
But anytime I see, the gardener put in different poses or situations for whether it be a cutscene or promotional material, I'm always just surprised how much use we get out of her, and how much kind of emotions that she portrays in this most sympathetic way.
It's true. These snuck in here somehow. I think these were supposed to be in the Mugu pile, but I'll show them quickly just because This one
Yeah,
I thought
Zero.
was maybe when we were wondering if our main character was also a mushroom, who seems to have like small mushrooms enslaved on his back, but
Yeah, mini Viking,
young
young dwarf.
dwarf for the horde, but cute. Weapons and pockets? Question mark. um, are you cool to go a little bit longer? I have we've
Yeah,
been through a lot of the big stuff, but I do have some monster stuff to look through, and then I have like a few like gifs and images of some game like gray box scenes that we could flip through. But
sure.
we'll quickly go through some of this monster stuff because I do think it is interesting. Um,
Terry the Turtle.
Terry the Turtle, modeled,
Yeah,
animated,
yeah.
never made it into the game. This was from our first 3D when we moved to 3D, and we're figuring out our workflows, and the game was starting to take shape. This was one of the first like enemies we designed, which is more complex than some of our enemies now. Um, I believe he crawled along, and he would leave behind gas clouds that would eventually
Mhm.
dissipate. That you couldn't go in. That would come out of like those fruits on his back. Again, very clearly a plant, but sort of has some animal-like qualities to him. You could hit him with Mugu, and he'd get dazed with little stars, so that you could get by him. We learned a lot, both artistically and from the development side, making him.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of technical issues. I think it was just like, even from an animation point, you know, Maddie going through and animating his tail. Oh man, I remember.
Here's another early monster. Aren't you glad that this didn't make it?
Oh no, I mean, I love this. This is
This is
amazing.
gross.
Like, I just remember like the day that Kelvin just unveiled this this sculpt of this, and I was just like, that is just so disgusting and
Yeah, the
awesome.
brief for this was like something to do with like a teratoma, I think. Um,
Yeah,
and this is way more round than we have things now. This we hadn't quite figured out our like low poly look yet. The switch to
yeah,
3D was a big process. Our team wasn't totally unequipped, but there was a learning curve for everybody. So in the one sense, when I look back at a lot of these first things we were making, it's like, oh, it's a shame we never used that and this and that. But when you think about like what we gained through the process of figuring out how to like make these things, animate them, integrate them, connect them to game mechanics, um, it all
oh, yeah.
paid off in the end.
And even from my part, like understanding more about the 3D process and how to go about working with the artist and the limitations of it. Like, I provided the sketch for this and it was modeled, but then, I remember Maddie kind of going, "Oh no, do I have to rig and animate each of these?"
Each of these like globules and sacks.
Yeah.
Pretty quickly, then we moved on to something you do know.
Oh man.
This was the first design for gnarly rolling cabbage that actually turned out pretty much as intended.
Yeah.
We had the gardener
Again.
figured out at this point, and we had a game design for a big rolling cabbage. There
Yep.
she
And I
is.
think I think if we still have, our old spoons, we probably could find the old stream where I was doing this on my maybe Friday stream, and actually just kind of worked it out on it and kind of came up with this on during one of them. And I remember thinking, okay, this is fine. I like this. We could work with it, having this rolling enemy. And then Maddie showing me it after it was modeled, and me and her having a discussion of like, something's wrong because the eyes didn't quite work in the same way in 3D that it worked in a 2D sketch. And I'm not sure if we have image of what it ended up being, of what he, Frida, ended up looking.
She. I don't know that she was supposed to be gendered. I guess plants have genders.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah. But I just remember the last part, just like it was after 5 o'clock. I'm about to go home. Maddie sends me an image of the model. I'm like, something's off. I mean, it's good, but something's off. And then I just remember snipping, you know, an eyebrow off something. Just like try a unibrow. Let's see what it looks like.
That's how it came about.
Yeah, it was just like it seemed off because I think she didn't have, or like the eyes to itself, it didn't have like the lower lids. It just came off a bit wrong,
Yeah.
and we just had to fix the eyes in some way. I just knew it had to be with the eyes, and then I said, try eyebrows. I think we need eyebrows, and then I think it was unibrows. Try this, and she came back with a single unibrow, and I remember going, amazing. It's perfect. This is
This is the one.
it was just one of those, man, how do we hit upon these ideas? Um, yeah, this guy, again, I love it. I love. Part of me is just like I just love being able to be the person just to reinterpret other people's good ideas. This one was, a cactus that consumes other ones and wears their books. I think this was another piece which I worked on live on a stream, and just kind of went, how do I turn this idea into an actual character? Um, I remember me wanting eyes and you saying no, and I think it worked out fine without the eyes. Um,
Yeah, didn't we? The actual model for this, which hasn't made it back into the game yet, but hopefully will someday soon. We kind of set it up so that the skull makes it look like it has a face, right?
yeah,
Is that how it turned out?
like yeah, like in the what I was getting at here was like the skull itself are, the jaw and facial skull of a creature it it killed, but saved another purpose of kind of giving it a kind of face
Personality,
on
yeah.
its
Cool.
own.
This one I don't think ended up getting made.
I think it was modeled, just not really in the game.
Right.
When we had our prime specimens.
Here's the Teratoma Vulgaris thing we were looking at, just to give you an idea of the scale. And also, if you were worried that it only had one anus on the front, the side view shows you that there were, in fact, multiple anuses all over it. So you can sleep easy.
I mean, again, I gotta hand it to it. Like the descriptions passed to me, which is it's a walking collection of tumors.
Yeah.
It's Moses' prey absorbs through
through skin flaps. Ugh.
skin.
Here's a little more funny one. The Queen Mugu.
Yeah, I mean, I
Another
think
lost concept, but she was cool.
Yeah, how do we kind of maintain what a movie looks like and just kind of make a larger version of it?
I'm going to switch gears a little and go backwards in time and look through early ideation for monsters.
I mean,
these are just wild. Even like, there's a few pages of these we're going to look through, and just outside of our project, I think there's a lot of really cool ideas in here. This was still more horror-y than we ended up, I think. Like when you see like the little boy with the tentacles coming out of him, and
yeah, definitely. I think even these explorations, I think we were looking for like plant monsters when when we were calling them monsters. We really kind of wanted to go in that direction of kind of making them look like creepy versions of plants. Again, with these ones, it really was about what kind of silhouettes we can have, and some of them were cute, many of them not. I'm not sure how many of the ideas really kind of followed through to what we have these days, but I just remember just kind of doing as many of these as we could and having you kind of feel which one you liked.
I feel like you have the beginnings of like a one of those like twisted children's books here.
Yeah.
You know, you could write like a little story for each one of these, because a lot of them do sort of have, you know, some cutie elements to them, like the little eyes and like this guy in the middle clasping his hands together, who's sort of, you know,
Yep.
and the rooster thing up top is cool. This is the point at which I was like, plants, plants, plants. I don't want roosters.
Yeah.
I think we found a good middle ground. But these are a lot more high concept too. I don't think we had. I think we were pretty early on in moving to 3D at this point, and these were just some ideation type stuff. But I just wanted to show them off because they are really cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where just how much, even for myself, to remind us how much we had to produce just trying to find the things that we kind of liked. How
Yeah,
many ideas just we come up with and then throw out.
yeah. Well, they could all come back someday. Like I said, these to me are like some of the least Terrorarium stuff that was produced, even though they
Yeah.
came pretty late in the game's life cycle. But like, there's such a fountain of ideas here, you know. Like I
Yeah.
think
I mean,
this thing on the bottom left is the only one that actually moved forward and became an asset at one point. And there's no longer, but there was a version of that that was doing things and slightly animated.
yeah.
But
I
the
mean,
rest of these are
that
like,
did.
this feels like a different game. This maybe.
Yeah.
Oh, there's the progress on that one. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that did become one of our first 3D models. I remember having that modeled, but it wasn't modeled kind of with straight um, arms. So Maddie having to rig it with all these bends and then animate it afterwards. I just remember that being an arduous process.
What I remember about it was I think we settled on this one from all of those because it was clearly a plant. We liked the idea of roots. We had some game design it would tie into, but it was a good balance between like, again, this was more horror-y than where we ended up, but like the
Yeah.
human teeth made it so creepy. It was a
Yeah.
good mashup of like a plant with one really unsettling quality, which I thought was
Yeah.
cool.
Again, it's the visual, the uniqueness of it, like just a clump of roots. Uh, this one was interesting. I mean, I think more from the real world aspect of it, of researching and finding these types of trees with these growth on it, but less so on the final art. Not one of my favorite, but I guess I did finish it off.
Here's another exploding tumor-like
Hmm.
thing. I don't remember much about that, but
Yeah,
it's the,
larger movie, a little more Terminator painting.
yeah, I think this might have been the origins of like the Mugu Queen concept. I don't remember.
Yeah,
Let's
I think
go ahead.
no. This is just one of the ones, but I think the past few were just kind of taken from those black and white concepts, silhouette ex- explorations.
Um, I wish I had more of this stuff, but maybe this is a theme for another stream. I just have a few images here. While I was getting all this art together, there was some mixed in, some sort of more snapshots and things of like our game dev type stuff. Um,
Hmm.
and I thought we'd look at some of this. We can go more into depth on this kind of stuff on a future stream
Yeah,
where I can gather more of it. But like this, I just wanted to share because this was early on in a more familiar version of the game where we had decided to really lean into the maker mode, and this was a map made with one of the first sort of like user friendly versions of maker mode that you could do from within the game and save it and share it and go back and play it and that kind of stuff. So you'll see a lot of familiar elements in here, like trees and rocks that you recognize, and the exploding turnips and things like that. I think Kelvin may have made this map. I don't really remember, but the reason I thought this was cool was because I don't know if it always comes out. Hopefully it'll be a little more apparent when the game launches with the story campaign, that like when you're playing a level, you're often like inside of an actual terrorarium. So this is the camera is just zoomed way out on the game scene, and you can see that you're actually inside of a glass bubble that someone has built, and you're like navigating and playing inside of a player's creation. That the intent when you build a level and share it is that you're making a garden, and your murder garden is shared, and people can warp into it and play it. So I wanted to show this on stream.
Yeah, and if you look into the top right, you actually see another terrarium.
Oh yeah, that's true. A different map.
Yeah. Now again, it's one of those things where just from the various, from the very beginning, and through all the iterations we've gone through, it's been a sticking idea, something of like placing our characters within this small little world.
Remember this?
Oh yeah. I mean, this was fun. We
got to the point where like we settled on low poly. We had Mugu, we had a gardener, and this was one of the first sort of like we're trying to get the look down. And there's a playable demo out there that looks like this.
I love the bridge.
Yeah, the bridges were super cool. And you don't do much more in this demo other than like there's actually sort of like a tutorial. You like collect Mugu, learn to beckon them, you break a couple walls, you set a couple things on fire, and you get to the end. But this was really almost like the first proof of concept that was anything like what our game turned out to be. And I think along our journey, because we went through different versions of the game and we were trying to figure out our look and the 3D workflow and everything, like at this point and many points in the project's life, the art was so far ahead of the game development. Like we didn't necessarily always do it in the right order because we had to learn how to do those things. So like this what you're looking at here is really like a gray box that looks really, really, really cool. I think because we just had to learn like how do we light something like this? Like how does the camera work? How does how do we build one of these worlds from assets?
I mean, this is this era where the level itself was floating islands, attached floating islands, which was a bit of a departure from the terrarium idea.
Yeah, Maholti, we knew, like I said, we really leaned into gardening, and as soon as it was a maker game, it just seemed obvious that like you're making gardens that you share. Let me see. Then we did a little more sort of like traditional gray boxing, where we started to rough some things in, figure out how levels would work. This was pre it will be a maker mode game, or as maker mode centric, and we were going to build all of our own bigger, grander scale levels, but it became apparent that we could get a lot more bang for our buck going the other direction, because once we started building some of these levels, we realized we didn't, as a team as small as ours was, we didn't have the resources to make as many of these as we thought we would need. These sort of like bespoke, bigger, grander levels.
Mm-hmm.
You can see in here like the prototype of the Shroomovator weight loadable flower.
Yeah.
Prime specimen is in there.
I mean, from a level design perspective, it was really great. Like, it was part tutorial. It showed you everything you needed to learn from the first level. It was, it was great from a game design standpoint. I think we learned a lot for ourselves at this point.
So it's just an art test on our Mugu blood system.
Right.
Splatting on things. And lastly, here's a gif of the first working Shroomovator.
Oh man, it's just something like it looks so simple, but oh my gosh, for like to get that working correctly.
I know. So I mean, I think that's everything. We've gone a little bit over time. Is there anything else you want to discuss while we're here or mention? It's fun. This was fun change of pace. I've been playing the game so much on stream that like we really have been working on this for years now, considering the origin points of the ideas and things like that. So
Yeah, yeah, and I hope for people that watch this or and have made levels for it, that they see the origins of the game and how far things have to go to make a game.
yeah, a lot of love went into it. That's for sure. I think a bunch of these concepts and things, if they haven't already, some of these are going to be shared on our social media channels. So if you want to see any more of them, you can check that out, or hit us up on Discord. That will wrap us up for this week. Thank you for joining. I believe that next week is our contest winners announcement stream. We have almost finished the judging period, and we're going to collect all that data and see who wins, and I believe next week we will know. So you're going to want to tune in for that one. And in the meantime, check us out on Discord. You can watch past broadcasts or, just play the game. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.